Okay. Can everyone hear me?
I can lock it up.
All the way in back. All right. So I'm Darryl Davis, and I work at the Charles Hayden Planetarium in Boston. I'm the systems coordinator, and basically, that's, if you go back old school, chief technician. So let's take care of this right now. Yes, got it. So the difference between the Hayden Planetarium and the Charles Hayden Planetarium. So the Hayden Planetarium in New York was originally funded for their planetarium, and the same folks who funded that planetarium also funded ours in Boston. So that's really the big difference. The only difference, of course, the technology has changed for both, but really the funding came from the same source. So getting back to this is now. But now let's go back to 1948, before we had a stationary planetarium. This is the traveling planetarium. And this would be basically constructed and deconstructed and rebuilt somewhere else, like a town hall.
Wow.
And they would go into different places all around New England, and they would take this thing all over the place.
How big was it?
It was a with a 70-foot dome. No, not 70 foot. It was a 20-foot dome. So it was a very small space, didn't seat a lot of people. And it had the original, one of the original Spitz A1 projectors. And you can see the, very unique projector. And you can also take a look at the background, because they actually created a skyline that was attached to the dome. So when you took the thing apart, this is them lifting it into place. And when you took the thing apart, like this, the skyline would still be attached to the dome. So this was from 1948. And then to the early 1950s, they finally made the planetarium stationary. So they had this dome in one place around where the science park is right now. And this was a permanent planetarium called the mini planetarium. Now, the other thing is that around this time also, they were using the Spitz, but then later on, they switched to a projector called the Peerless, which actually I've never seen, and they don't have any pictures of it, so I don't have any pictures of it. But in any case, they switched projectors to the Peerless, and then when we get to the late 50s, they basically closed it, and they sold the projector. So, yeah. Then came the time to start getting ready for the bigger planetarium. So, had to make money for the bigger planetarium, so you did a few things. You sold stars, and you sold seats. So the Corcus projector, which is the next projector, was actually built in Springfield by the Corcus brothers, and some of you may already know that the original Corcus projector is still in Springfield and still operating at this time. But they decided to build one for us, for this planetarium. And here's the planetarium being built. And here's the dome being layered.
What year was this?
This was early, 57 probably.
Okay.
So still finishing it off. This is the interior dome. And if you look very carefully, I saw this on the dome and I wondered how they did that. And if you look at the dome, I mean, this is the dome before it was painted. And if you look at some of the panels, you can see little circles on it. So I believe that these were actually spun. Each one of these panels was spun, and that's how they got the curvature out of it. And, you know, pretty amazing.
Wow.
Corcus Brothers working on the Corcus projector. And there it is.
Well, it's really Bobby the robot.
What a beast.
Yeah, it is. But it's a beautiful thing. I mean, okay, so this is the pic for it. And right now you can see that so Boston had the original kind of like rising skyline. So during the show, the skyline was raised from behind the dome, and you know, you have a skyline for your performance.
I remember that.
And here's just an advertising photo. And there it is in its beauty.
Do you know how many stars it projected?
Well, I know that the Zeiss projects 9,000 stars. I don't remember how many this projected, but I remember being told that this projector and the one at the Morrison had more stars than the Zeiss and had a better star field than the Zeiss.
Wow.
So these were two unique projectors and pretty incredible. Now, Morrison used theirs for a long time. And before they moved and renovated, they still were using it. This one, it had a few issues. I mean, it would try to project planets, but it had a little issue with motion of planets. And then the thing would leak, and you had oil leaking all over the place. And so, not good. But hey, they used it till the 1970s, and it worked for the most part. Now, what happened to it is that I read that it was sold for parts, and parts for what, I don't know, but there you go, it was sold. And that brings us to the 1970s for I forgot this. So this is the console for the Corcus. Now the person in the console, her name is Val Wilcox, and she was the first female operator for the planetarium. Val Wilcox. What, the console? The stars? The stars were projected from this. From the star projector. Also, I decided to transition away from technology for a bit because the lobbies were quite interesting too back then. So this was a very simple lobby for the planetarium, and pretty interesting. And that is what the outside looked like.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was just telling my friend Caity that, well, I used to volunteer at the one in New York, and they have a similar look. They have a similar look.
They did.
They did, yes. And we do an annual Christmas show, which is something that a lot of planetariums did, so we did it. Our theater did it. And along with that, people knew it was coming because we put this on top of the dome.
Yes, are you up there?
No, behind the dome, I'd go up there, but not like that. Okay, so this was 1958 when this particular planetarium opened with the Corcus. This was one of the first special effects. I believe it's a bolide, one of the first special effects we used in the planetarium. So this is very, very, very old. And of course, this had to be somewhere away from what we call the cove, which is where the skyline is, because you couldn't put anything where the skyline was. So you had to put effects elsewhere, like maybe in the pit. And the pit is the circular area surrounding the projector. Now we get to the 1970s. Because the Cork is very good projector, but has had a few issues, we decided to get a Zeiss planetarium because they were very popular at the time. So these projected 9,000 stars, the 5 little planets, the sun, the moon, and it had a few nebulas built into some of those star plates, so it would project some of those too. And this is the beginning of it. And it was constructed. And I believe,
Where did that one end up?
well,
He hasn't gotten there yet.
yeah, I'll get to that. I think, I don't know if any of you know Larry Schindler, but I think the guy in the white shirt is Larry Schindler.
Oh, yeah.
And that is projector in 1970s. And you can see it still has the rising skyline. And
It's illuminating.
well, and also that's how we eliminated the dome and the projector, because we had red and blue lights, and so you could project red. So if you later on, if you had an image of the sun and you want to feel like you were on the sun, we would make it red. And then of course you had the blue for the blue sky.
Were the buildings on the horizon as shown, were they used to generate revenue? As in some planetariums would put a known business as part of the horizon?
In actuality, yes. Because some of you may know the famous Citibank sign that's in Boston.
From Fenway, yes.
Yeah, well, you can't see it here, but it's on this model too. So yes, Citibank sign on the model.
Bad source of light pollution.
Yes, there you go.
So back then, this is the console for it. So the front side and the left side are actually Zeiss. The right side is basically for special effects, slide projectors, and when we get them, and also for raising the skyline, raising and lowering the skyline. And for sound.
Just like to ask a question.
Yes.
Maybe people show hands, how many people remember that projector? Did you go to the planetarium back then? Because that's when I first went in the 6th grade. I remember that projector, and I'm just curious how many other people.
I remember it.
6th grade though.
But a few.
Well, it's been there since 1970 up until 2010. So it was there for a long
Oh,
time.
okay, I didn't realize it lasted until 2010.
Yeah, there for a long time. Oh, this is our little sound control room, little room behind the console.
Yeah. Wow. Tape.
Tape, yes.
Yeah.
And once again, promotional photograph with people in it.
How many seats could it hold?
This one had just over 300. I don't remember the total count, but yeah, it had over 300. And this is for the 20th anniversary. And someone mentioned, do you still have models of the planetariums? And this is one of the cases in the lobby that show the different types of planetarium that existed before the Zeiss.
That's the original Spitz though, right? Or is that a model?
I think that's a model, because you saw the original skits. Yeah. And change of lobby again. So in the 70s, basically we had the projector, we had the skyline, And we started experimenting with other special effects, but once again, because we had the skyline, we really couldn't do anything. That changed in the 80s. So this is from Maps 80, which is the one that my first one that I actually went to. And at this point in time, it was the last time that people would get to see the rising skyline, because in the early 80s, they took down the skyline, sold it to a restaurant sometime somewhere in Somerville. And then we move into the period of slide projectors. So in the beginning, in the 1980s, we took down the skyline, and then we added what's called a cove around the entire planetarium, basically 2 shelves. And on these shelves, you could put slide projectors and you could put special effects. So we started doing that. And here you see, I'm going to talk about how you have 3 projectors here, but I'll get to that in just a minute, because when the time we started moving to slide projectors, we only had 2 slide projectors aimed at one screen. So it's kind of like a simple dissolve system that you might have in a classroom or in a theater. So simple dissolve system that we use to put images on the dome other than the stars, and also create some effects. Slides.
Storyboard.
Oh, God.
Mhm.
Okay, and once again, we started getting into special effects. Some of you worked in planetarium, so some of this might be familiar to you. So these are basically film strip projectors, but when you see them a little bit later on, well, they'll have something in the gate that's not a slide. They'll have something outside, something spinning that causes some sort of effect, kind of like this. Yeah, time of special effects in slide projectors. This is where this is our lab where we made some of those projectors and also maintained the slide projectors. And this is how we controlled the slide projectors. It's called an AVL Eagle. And we basically use this to program what the slide projectors did.
Yeah.
Yep. Lobbies.
Thank you.
Big one.
And when the Omni Theater opened, so these are your typical 5-inch discs. Omni had 10-inch discs. This is Larry Schindler programming some sort of show in our new sound studio. We have Larry Schindler again in our old sound studio. And of course, at this period of time, we're kind of making soundtracks for shows. So we not only had the live star show, but we also had recorded shows with music and special effects. And this was all throughout the 80s. Larry Schindler in the new sound studio. So let me explain to you about what happened in the 80s. So I mentioned that we had the systems where we had 2 dissolvable slide projectors. Well, Larry Schindler decided we want something better. So while other people were still doing the 2 projector dissolves, a 3rd projector was added. So if you had a panoramic projection system with 2 projectors, add a 3rd one. Over that layer, we had what's called our B section, and we had 6 projectors aimed at the dome in that B section. Then we had a C section and 5 projectors aimed at that dome, and then 1 for the zenith. And so with each one of those levels and slide positions, you had 3 projectors, and zenith had 6. So you can actually do animation across the entire dome. And that was the purpose of what all of those were for. And I mentioned this to Caity in 1984. They wanted to develop their own light show, and it was called The Voyage of Ema. And basically it took all the slide projectors in the dome, except that there were extra slide trays. So in the middle of the show, at some point, you were given a point where you had to go behind the dome and swap slide trays.
Wow.
80 slide trains, yeah.
Yep, so,
Or any of the shows, live shows,
yeah, no, I mean, there hasn't been a period where we didn't do a live show.
excellent.
So in 1987, the Omni opened, and so we had to redo our lobby area, and this is one of the effects of redoing the lobby area. So this was outside the planetarium at the time. And also in the 90s, from 1990 to 2000, we basically sponsored Astronomy Day or Space Day at the museum. So this is one of the things that we had to do as a planetarium staff to make sure this all ran smoothly. And we also invited the amateur telescope makers of Boston to basically help us out with that, and that's who the folks you see here. And we had star parties in the evening for each one of those. Or solar viewing during the day. Or making comments.
Oh, yeah.
So once again, lobby how it looked back in '87 and up until the next renovation. Then came the next renovation, 1995. Big changes here. So we actually got rid of some of those slide projectors, and we added what's called the all-sky system, which is basically one projector would project 1/6 of the sky, because basically the slides were made into different wedges, pie wedges, like, and all of those put together would create one scene. And here's the interior of the new theater. Now, you can notice the slide projectors and a few effects, but notice the video projector. So this was the upgrade for this particular renovation. We added video projectors. We have 5 of them. You can see 2 of them on either side of the Zeiss here. And you can see another video projector on the other side. And let's see, right in there, there was a 5th projector that aimed up to the zenith. Video projector in between the struts of the Zeiss. So this is where we went all out with the SPICE system. The SPICE system was made by Skyscan in New Hampshire, and they were involved with the planetarium since the late 70s because they created the first special effects system that we had. During this renovation, the special effects system got upgraded. The Zeiss got upgraded so that we could actually control it through SPICE, and the slide projectors were controlled by this, no more AVL. And some of you may know that person.
Yes.
Yep, Noreen was major presenter. So also with this upgrade, something happened. We changed the console on the right, and you can see it has a bunch of sliders. The sliders are for lights. The lower sliders are for the special effects system. You can dial through the special effects and call whichever ones you need. The SPICE is on the right, and on the left. So this is something we had for a while, but didn't quite work that well. You might have heard of buttons being in seats, where the kids could actually select something and basically have something different happen during the show. One of the shows that we had for a while was where in the solar system is Carmen Sandiego, and the kids got to select with the buttons what they wanted to do. And so because the shows were on Laserdisc, well, they would get adjusted to handle whatever that particular thing was supposed to happen. So this was a major renovation. 1995, and I don't have pictures of this, but during that renovation, we also built an observatory. I do have pictures of that. Oh, that's the control system in the background, much different from the one that you saw earlier. And the audio is all digital now, and the video are on hard drives, and just lots of digital. But yes, observatory was built for this renovation. And what's really cool is that at the same time the observatory was built, we basically strung audio and video cables from the observatory down to the planetarium. We could put the audio into the planetarium system. We could basically send the video to the video projectors. And what we would do after a Sky Tonight show, well, during the Sky Tonight show, in the early evening, we would focus on something in the sky, and basically we could put whatever the person in the observatory was looking at on the dome, and a picture of the person in the observatory on the dome, and there was two-way communication between the observatory and the planetarium. So this was a cool thing because it got people excited to go up to the observatory after the show. And two neat telescopes. So this is the entrance or exit of our planetarium. Did I really like it? Yes, I really like this one. Can't you tell? So it had a nice curving wall, which was, really nice because when you went inside, it was kind of mysterious. So you go past this curved wall, and then once you were inside, there were lights in the floor that would change, which was just something kind of cool. That's what it looked like. That nice curve. And lobby also went through some changes too. So that was the new exhibit for the lobby. And a lot of it was interactive. So you had knobs that would do something and pretty pictures, of course. And then monitors with the you could do something with these. I forget exactly what they do. But once again, an exhibit that was interactive and not just looking at stuff and things like that. Okay, what is this they're wondering? Well, later on, we got a new planetarium director, Robin Simons, and she wanted to break out and do some really different stuff in the planetarium. So she decided we should use actors inside the planetarium. This one is from a show called Gravity Rules, where there's a jester and someone that sounds like Whoopi Goldberg is talking out of the dome. And basically it was just experimenting. So the other one we had was there was one on Galileo, where an actor played Galileo. And then we had another one about the moon and the history of the moon, which didn't fare too well. But Gravity Rules and Galileo really did well. So if you ever want to experiment, actors on the dome. And that was the crew back then for this renovation. You might see some familiar faces there.
Ron did.
Yeah. Now we come to 2010. Sadness. I mean, you saw what the inside looked when it was built. This is what happened in 2010 when it got demolished. Everything had to go. Even that.
Oh,
Poor baby.
Bastards.
So this was all to make way for the new theater. So we began building. So the original floor was flat. This one you can see has a level in it. So it rises up as you go back. New seats, new wall paneling, and a new cove. That's the home for the new Zeiss. There it is being installed. Zeiss StarMaster. Close up. If we haven't seen one of these things, the planets are the things that look like cans. Now, I have to ask myself this, because these guys created really cool instruments, especially the Zeiss Mark 6, which lasted till 2010, and worked really well, although it started leaking too. So. But I have to ask myself, so you see how these planets are set up? So what happens if a planet is being projected and it's projected where one of those struts are? So, don't know what they were thinking, but it happens from time to time. Planet disappears where it should be.
What year was this?
2010. And we also got upgraded video projector. So this is a Sony high resolution 4K projector. We have two of them. Basically, they merge in the middle and project a full scene on the dome. And that's basically how we get images on the dome other than the Zeiss images. New control room, lots of computers. Control panel, new control panel. Controls lighting and audio. New console. Or something called Digital Sky, that was the system at the time, and also console for the Zeiss. And in addition to that, we got a server in order to basically make the shows. So the shows are stored on this. And we also had a test dome installed with the software. So this is Digital Sky software. And here's the test dome. Now here's the thing. There was no dome upstairs to make a show. So guess where we had to make that show? There. So most of the show was laid out in the test dome until we were able to get it up onto the big dome and kind of do the smoothing out of things. But yes, this was very useful in the early days because we wouldn't have been able to make a show without it.
What were they using for a projector down there?
You see that blue thing in the middle?
Okay.
That's a video projector, unlike something that you have right here, and it projected a 1K of the images on the dome. And here is where we are again today. So this is the image of the actual stars on the dome coming from the Zeiss, along with the constellations coming from the Zeiss.
What do you think of the quality of that Zeiss versus the earlier version?
These are pinpoint,
Okay.
although because they're made with fiber optics, the stars dull over time. Yeah. Well, but right now you can get an LED upgrade, and hopefully sometime in the future we'll do that, but we can't do it right now. But you can get an LED upgrade for it, which would be really cool. So, console for the StarMaster. And program for the StarMaster. Okay, now, we do space shows, we do star shows, we do explore the universe shows, but someone mentioned laser shows. So we don't have really laser shows anymore. we have what's called music shows. So we basically create a show using a certain artist's music, and our artists basically create the show using that music. They create images that go along with that music, and we have evening presenters who actually present that. That is not this. What you see here is something even bigger extension of what we do at the planetarium. So now we have live bands that come into the planetarium and when we do projections on the dome while they're doing their thing. So these are sort of like one-offs, but we've been doing a lot more of them. Every now and then we have something called SynthFest where artists will come in. The audio artists will hook into our system to do their thing. And then we have digital artists that will feed us images from their system that we plug into our system and put their images onto Dome, and everyone goes and jams.
Why did you get rid of the laser shows?
They're not totally gotten rid of. We still have, and probably will always have, Pink Floyd.
Of course.
Definitely.
Yeah, Pink Floyd still brings them in. And that is the staff when we first opened for the 2010. And hey, why not rock the universe?
So back to that staff, are people specialists?
Yes, so we had 4 basically special effects artists who basically create the videos that we use for both the planetarium shows and for the music shows. We also had a educator who basically went through the shows, made sure things were okay. Also created special shows. The one that they had back there, they created something called Cosmic Kids Club, and remember her name? Amanda, yes, Amanda slipped my mind, and she's the one in the blue, and she was our educator who basically did programs like that and would make programs that we use inside the planetarium and both outside of the planetarium. So she created educational things that we can go do outside the planetarium. So quick, that's Digistar, so that's what we have right now. And audio is controlled by Astro Effects Commander, which is how someone sounds. Someone knows that is familiar. And so now instead of 2 projectors, we have 6. This is kind of fuzzy, but we have a room with now 2 projectors in it. And then we have a few other projectors around the dome. So we have a total of 6 projectors making a single scene on the dome. And new computers that go along with it. And that is my talk.